Greetings and welcome to Legitcast episode 14, a TTRPG podcast. I'm your host and narrator John, and I am joined by a very special guest, Sotiris, who is the first fellow Greek guest of my show. Hello Sotiris, how are you?
Hi John, I'm doing well and it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We are both dressed appropriately in green as we are about to talk about your amazing game, Evergreen, and sink our teeth deep and learn what all of that's about. I've been having my eye on your game for quite a while through the social media, where we got a chance to meet each other, primarily I think Blue Sky. And I'm very excited to talk about this game because it has wonderful aesthetics, and I have so many questions about it. So how about we begin?
Absolutely, and I should say I have also had my eye on your game. I don't need to tell the people here, but do go check out Metanthropes.
Thank you for the cross promo. All right, let's talk about Evergreen. Before we get into the setting or system, I would like to learn the story behind it, how it was conceived, what was the idea behind it, what was the first steps, and then a little bit about the team that you formed, your little Avengers group, to create it and bring it into reality.
Absolutely, that's a great question. So, I have to say, I have been playing tabletop games regularly for more than a decade now for sure, which is still much shorter than many people claim, but it's been a while. And I was always into homebrewing my games. I always had that designer itch in me. Both as a game master, I needed to write my own things. I'm horrible at running pre-made adventures, which I think is a skill I should have. But also in terms of mechanics, I have, of course, written my own fantasy heartbreaker. I, at some point, wrote a 200-ish page rework of D&D 5th edition, which of course was fully non-professional, but the bug was there. And the thing is, while I was always fascinated by natural imagery and larger-than-life adventure games like that, Evergreen started off from a very slice-of-life scenario, where I had not written or homebrewed anything for some time, and I was just out talking with a friend of mine who is one of the big names of the Greek Tolkien Society, Dimitri Kolove. If you ever see this, hi, thanks for instigating this. And we got to talking about tabletop games and designing our own games, and I absentmindedly started a rant about how I would like to create my own game, and I don't know why I didn't do it yet, and so on and so forth. And I was walking home that night, started thinking about, hey, if I did make my own game, what would that look like? And that's when it all started. It went through layers of iteration, of course, and that was a long time ago now. But it really had its roots in a friendly discussion between two nerds.
I like that. How long have you been designing Evergreen?
Oh, well, I should say I have been actively designing Evergreen for like maybe 2 years now, but it was in the works for a lot longer before that, maybe another couple of years. But, you know, it takes a long time for an idea and a basis to form, at least if you don't sit down and make yourself do it. And then when it's done, it starts to get going. And when I started like running my own playtest campaigns and so on, and then started thinking about presenting this to the public and making something that's visually pleasing and easy for other people to get and not just me, then the ball got rolling, and it was quick-ish progress, at least from there on.
It's definitely pleasing and eye candy. Tell me about the team of artists. You're the lead designer, right? And there is no one else designing it. Is that correct?
That's right. As far as writing and game design goes, this is my baby.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I definitely have to shout out both friends and people that play tested the game and everyone. No game is made in a vacuum, and I have adopted
Nice.
a bunch of ideas, both from suggestions and from, of course, the community at large. But yeah, the words and the rules are me, so you have me to blame if it doesn't work. Other than that, I think that the person that's closest to Evergreen after me is Nikki Lambada. She's our art director and a very close friend of mine. And she's well, as much, if not more, of a TTRPG nerd as me.
Okay.
We have different tastes in games, but we have been playing together for a long time now. And she's also a fully trained artist who can definitely see and imagine things that I never could. I think, so in our social media, there is a post of a before and after of how Evergreen looked just coming out of my mind and with a rudimentary setup, and what it became after she got her hands on it.
I'm really curious to see that, yeah. Because, yeah, that was interesting.
I have a lot to thank her for, and also for communicating with our artists and everything. She can put art into words in ways that I could never.
That's indeed
so yeah, we have
a great talent, and she's done an amazing work with the aesthetics of the game. That's the first thing that initially, caught my eye, and is there anyone else on the team that you would like to mention before we start talking about the setting and the lore and the world of Evergreen?
For sure. So just brief mentions. Our two illustrators right now are Goki and Fof. You can find their social media and their online presence on our website. They have done some excellent work as well. And then we have a group of two editors who are also friends of mine, and they also run a very successful creative writing workshop. They're also speculative fiction writers themselves, and also
Nice.
TTRPG nerds. Generally, almost everyone involved in this project likes role-playing games.
Okay, surprise question number one. Do every member of the Evergreen team play druids or rangers in Dungeons and Dragons?
I mean, that's a good question, but I think not, just because most of us have been playing tabletop games for so long that we don't have a niche anymore, at least class-wise, and most of us, I think, don't primarily play D&D anymore.
Right. I like this question, and we're gonna get to indie TTRPGs and the contrast with DD&D in a short bit. But let's talk a little bit about Evergreen. What's this world about? How nature plays its role, because it definitely has to do a lot with nature and the green in general, like heathen and earthly stuff. Judging by the cover that I see right now on this beautiful picture. So talk to me about the setting and the world of Evergreen.
Absolutely. So, Evergreen, as I first pictured it, came with this tagline, which you'll also find on our website. It's a game about heroes by necessity, companionship on the road, and a harsh world. And that last point, the harsh world, is, I think, what identifies it beyond anything else, because it is set in a fantasy world where nature is present and vengeful. People are, and there are no humans, but the peoples of the world, I will get into that, make their lives in relation with how they endure nature and how they survive in her world, because they live on borrowed lands. This world is not theirs. What that means is a bit abstract and also left up to the game master. There are no rules about nature's vengeance, but there is a lot of story. So people have come to know that if you chop down trees to build your settlement, it might soon be overrun by beasts or beset by illness or natural disasters and so on. So the crux of the game is establishing a community in this adversarial world. But it's also based on the different peoples of the world and how they and their civilizations deal with this cosmic truth of nature, this unchangeable background. And that, at least in my experience, has made for some very interesting and intense role-playing on the table.
So, for example, if someone would try to build a castle, what could happen? It would be like weather that storms to bring it down, would be like a stampede of beasts, or like a disease, or any between, or what side of nature is vengeful, or all of them?
It's all of them, and it's also deliberately left arbitrary because, if you do gouge the earth and mine stone to build a castle, then your castle might be hit by a storm or an earthquake. That might be a random event, like these things happen. Nature is not only vengeful. Natural disasters and beasts and illnesses do occur. So there is this question about superstition versus actual fact. The presence of nature in the world and her vengefulness is fact, but how that is expressed and what its limits are and what her limits are is left up to interpretation, and there's no clear answer to it. So it's mostly how the people feel about it.
And I suppose which side does the GM want to explore? Like, would be like earthquakes, natural disasters, or nature and wildlife, or I suppose nature, like Fae-like entities. Like, talk to me about the what do they call them? Nymphs or dryads, or what sorts of creatures? Like the one that I see over here on the right with the horns, like a satyr, maybe. Talk to me about the creatures found.
Absolutely. So that was a beautiful illustration by Fof, and that was a faun. Fauns are a very interesting subject, and I will get into those because they are one of the playable peoples. But in general, yes, there are all sorts of magical things in nature. These creatures are generally known as the green-touched. The green is the natural magic, the magic of the world that some peoples also learn to harness and wield. And the green-touched are those either people or creatures that have this hint of magical talent, that are supernatural in a sense, or maybe even more natural in Evergreen sense. There are all sorts of creatures like this, but again, by design, they have not been studied and examined analytically or academically, if you want. They are just various things that you may come across in the wilderness, which is unknowable, wondrous, but also dangerous. So if you meet one of my favorites that you will also find in our latest document, a peacock kind of creature that sits on two legs perched on a tree and talks to you with a voice sweet like honey, maybe offering some dubious deal, that doesn't have to adhere to some sort of categorization. It's not necessarily a species, it's not a named thing that people know about, it just is. It's a part of the forest. There may be more than one, there may be singular creatures, and while you will see creatures of the woods, both in our playtest adventures and in general in the game, a lot of them are left vague, and even if they're presented, they're left to the game master to fill in the gaps whatever way they feel like.
Talk to me a little bit about player options. You mentioned the faun. What other playable races and or classes or other options and paths does this game have?
Great. So for classes, that's a quick answer. There are no classes in Evergreen. The system is pretty simple as far as character creation goes. You just assign some points to either skills, which affect how well you roll, or traits, which are sort of like feats in Dungeons and Dragons or stunts in Fate. They're singular abilities that change how your character functions.
All right.
But other than that, there are no classes to speak of, so it's more build your own character, a pretty typical classless system. As far as races or peoples, as they are known in the world, there are 3 options, and I stuck with 3 because there's a lot of tension that comes from the communities and the traditions of each of these peoples. And if there's a few of them, there's more room to actually get to know them better and study them in a bit more depth. So, first off, we have the trolls. The trolls are the most of the time gentle giants of the world. They live long, they live slow, and they have been part of the world since time immemorial. And they are also the ones that are most in touch with nature and most respectful of her. Now, I will present a bunch of stereotypes, but as I usually make a point of, individuals are their own people, and they don't have to adhere to these stereotypes. So if I say that trolls behave like this, that does not mean that a troll, a character that you meet or you play, has to act like this. They just act in that cultural background. So, in general, trolls live long. They live about 2 centuries, which means that they can afford to live slow, and they can afford to build their societies around the bare minimum. They would not chop down trees to build their houses. They would rather guide the growth of the wildlife without chopping it down into functional buildings for them. Rather than burning trees for firewood, they take their time to collect the dead wood that has already fallen off of the trees and feed a single hearth in its settlement where everyone goes to warm up and cook and socialize. That's the trolls. Then there are the goblins, which live bright and fast. They live maybe half a century, so much shorter than trolls. So they can't afford this long lifespan of building things and taking your time through the world. Their method of surviving is grabbing what they need to survive and running from the repercussions, which has evolved into a network of caravans, of wagons on wheels that the goblins live in, that has also evolved into the main mode of transportation across the lands under the sun, as the world is called. So if you want to brave the wilderness, if you want to travel out, your best bet is to grab a goblin caravan to travel with. And these range from a few people or a family or two and a couple of wagons, all the way to entire cities on wheels. And finally, maybe the most tensionful of the 3, there are the fauns. And the fauns, as you very correctly observed, are much closer to nature because they were not always mortal peoples. They used to be immortal fae or creatures of the woods or what have you, until something happened a few centuries ago. And since then, they have been torn off from nature, who now hates them with a particular passion, even compared to the other peoples.
Okay.
And they have been thrust into a world that is both unknown to them and for which they are ill-equipped. So fauns had to depend on their community and on each other. At the start, congregating in one big city, which was assailed by all sorts of maladies, but they brute forced their way through it. As their walls were torn down by natural disasters, they built them up stronger. They learned to work marble, which would hold when stone and wood wouldn't. They developed medicine to withstand illness and disease. When their crops would not grow, they developed agricultural techniques so they would have no choice but to grow. And they essentially brought the most quote-unquote modern version of civilization to the lands. By necessity at start, but now that is their brand. Some are intrigued by it, some hate them for it.
I love how you basically reimagined some of the well-known, not say like races and associated with D&D, but like fables and stories like trolls and goblins, and how you uniquely position them into your own world. And one stark contrast with stereotypes in general is that your world doesn't have humans. No humans.
There are no humans, and as a fun tidbit, originally Evergreen was just humans. And then, after a discussion with my partner, she simply said that humans are boring, which is a contentious opinion. I'm not of that opinion in general, but in this case, she was absolutely right. And what evolved when I removed humans from the equation was much more varied and flavorful and had much deeper grounds for tension.
I would have to wholeheartedly agree. I think if you would have gone the human route, it would have looked like a survival game where nature is like the big bad guy in a sense, and humans are the good guys in a sense again. But with introducing like your evergreen races and uniquely position them, their civilization and cultures to your world, it makes everything much better, much more interesting. And now nature is, we have to coexist with nature. We don't have to win over nature, So yeah, I like it that you didn't go the human route, which you could definitely, play a game which is like man against nature. It's one of the like basic archetypes of storytelling. But now you give your own twist to it, and I think it's definitely the right decision. So do these races play along with each other, or like everybody hunts the goblins and the trolls hide from each others, and it's the fawn who are like the socializers? What's the dynamics between them?
Well, of course, the answer is, as always, it depends. But in general, they have had to play nice with each other because it's a harsh world. And community is a big theme in Evergreen. And they have all found out that through community they are stronger. But that, of course, doesn't apply to everyone. While a young troll might leave their settlement to go join one of the big fawn cities and see what the world is out there, or they might hop on a goblin caravan to travel, so might an older troll that is more strong-minded just resent any kind of visitors and outsiders because this is not how the world was. That holds true for everyone. Fawns have facilitated the relations between the people in their cities, but some of them are also they also carry this generational trauma of not knowing what they were and what has become of them. Also, this event that tore them off from nature is largely unknown even to fawnkind. The details are lost. So they carry a lot of reservation. Some might carry a lot of reservation about others. And similarly, some goblins are hospitable by trade because they facilitate people's travels over the world, and they may also be curious, and they may also be happy-go-lucky, but some might also see their people delegated to a role of ferrymen without any additional thought put into it, so they might grow resentful. It generally depends, but in my own playtests, I end up with varied parties with all kinds of peoples, and I think that is the best way to go about it, because this cultural background, this difference in cultural backgrounds, can give rise to very interesting role-playing and discussions.
Indeed. while we will return to the theme and setting, I see a D12 around on these pictures, and I have to say first off that the dodecahedron is my favorite die, like from the Platonic solids. But which one is the system a D12 system?
It is an absolutely D12 system. There are no other dice.
Ah, lovely. It's also quite unique. For some reason, people do not build their systems around D12, and I don't know why. But talk to me about the system of Evergreen. There it is.
Well, I can go into a bit of detail about the basic resolution because I ended up with this for many reasons. But then I sat down to think about it, and I was like, why am I using this resolution system, this rolling system? In the end, it makes sense for a multitude of reasons, but a good percentage of that is that I personally love the D12, and I think it's an underappreciated die, and it feels satisfying to roll.
I agree 100%. Yes.
I have a friend who would probably be much better positioned to talk about tactility in our tabletop games, because that's, I think, he loves to explore. But even with something as simple as rolling dice, I think there's a lot to be said about how it feels to roll this particular kind of roll. So, long story short, the basic resolution mechanic of Evergreen, the basic roll, has no external numbers other than the dice. You pick a bunch of 12-sided dice depending on the skill that is applicable to what you try to do, roll them all, and then you pick and add the two highest. So if I roll a 10, a 9, and a 1, my roll is a 19. 10 plus 9, the two highest.
Yeah. Okay.
This gives a consistency to the more experienced characters, so the more dice you roll, the better your results. But it also keeps the same range for everyone. Everyone can roll from 2 to 24. There's no other numbers involved.
Right.
And while it is more consistent, nothing is a given, and nothing is insurmountable. There's always a chance.
So, no, I think it's pretty clear. Even without looking to the manual, I think I got it. Are there any magic involved, druidic stuff? Using nature to your side, or summoning hurricanes or whatnot?
So there is definitely magic in the world. You will see some of that in the playtest document. Magic in the lands, if we're talking about halfway mechanical, halfway narrative terms, is split into two categories. The magic is the green. That's the magic that comes from the world. It's not necessarily given by nature as it would be to a Dungeons & Dragons paladin from their deity. It's more about you making some connections about how the world works on a spiritual level. You might gain some talent with the green by meditating and by feeling your place in the world, or you could also get it by just needing it if you're in dire danger, or if you're forced to make these connections because your life depends on it. There are two kinds of people and creatures that use this magic. There are the green touched, which I already mentioned earlier. These are the people that have some measure of talent with the green, usually some instinctive, small scale and very specific skills. For example, you have people that see very well at night, people that animals seem to love, or people that can predict the weather, stuff like that. You can find a couple of characters in the pre-made adventure and in the playtest that have these kind of green touched abilities. But then there are the verdants. The verdants are the closest thing we get to druids. They are people that can actually wield the green and form it into invocations that are extensions of their will, much more conscious. This is a system that is not yet here in the playtest, or in the public playtest. We have been playtesting it for a while internally. And the theme here is larger than life, huge abilities that also come at a big cost, both to purchase and also to use. The green wears you out.
What kind of cost? What kind of cost would that be?
So the short answer is that using the green wielding invocations hurts you in a very long-term way. It gives you what in the playtest document you would see as a wound or tension, which is long-term injuries, which you can flavor in any sort of way you want. I do have the catch-all term, which is the green burn, which is what Verdants go through if they tap into the magic too far. But you can flavor this in other ways as well. The thematic is that this magic is larger than you. It's part of nature, and it's not entirely meant for mortal people to wield.
Yeah, it's not like yours, you just tap into it.
Yes, precisely. It's larger. There's more of that to come in the second and final playtest of Evergreen, but that's for the future. For right now, the Verdants exist. You can meet one in the playtest adventure, but that's as far as we go.
But can you play like a green, not a Verdant, but a green? Can you use that an option to be able to cast a few? Not controlling the weather, but as you said, predicting it, which is I found interesting, the power level.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mentioned that two of the pre-made characters of the playtest are green touched. They have some sort of measure of control over the green. And these are just traits, so again, quote-unquote feats, that you can purchase as with any other kind of trait. The only difference is that usually you would have to decide alongside your game master how you came to have this magical talent. But you can get them same as any other ability. They're not that rare in the world.
Interesting. So we're talking about a world with a fresh take into fantasy tropes and a setting that is unique in its own way. Talk to me about the inspirations behind both the story and the world and the lore, but also behind the system. Let's start with the system. You already mentioned that basically it's because you love the D12, and it's a very good reason. Were there any other specific inspirations or mechanics that you have drawn inspiration from?
Definitely more than I can count, and I should say I'm in general pretty bad at pinpointing my exact sources of inspiration, but I can definitely point some fingers. So both for the system and for the world, I have to mention Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons, because they're just such mainstays in fantasy that you cannot avoid being influenced by them to some degree or another. I have actually had to check my my D&D influence while writing the game, and I realized that I wrote things that were just inspired by D&D without thinking about them, and then I had to go back and smooth them out and make them mine in some ways, and not take them for granted just because this is how things are done.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's a vice of any game designer that started off, well, traditionally, as people do. It is the largest game, so statistically speaking. Anyway, I think one of my biggest inspirations for rules and mechanics by far is Fate. Fate Core specifically, but generally the Fate system, which is published by Evil Hat Games, and it's focused on telling stories, cinematic stories about competent protagonists. It was my first brush with more narrative-forward games, and while I would say Evergreen is more of a midpoint between traditional and narrative, while Fate is all the way narrative, I have been inspired for a lot of things by how Fate works, because I think the game is just inspired. Other than that, I can definitely point fingers at Grant Howitt and Chris Taylor, who wrote Spire, The City Must Fall, and Heart, The City Beneath. I think the rule set is now
Heart
has now taken to be called the Resistance System.
Okay.
Their writing style and their mechanics are very fresh and inventive, and while I can't point to anything in particular, I'm sure I have been influenced by them in some way or another, which also stands for Felix Isaacs with The Wild Sea, which is another beautiful creation. Also, as far as prose goes, and prose in general, world building and attitude towards the world, I definitely have to thank J Dragon and their
Wonderhome.
creation Wonderhome, absolutely, which I also personally love as a game.
Yeah.
And yeah, just one final mention, if I don't go too long. I think Sean Tomkin did an amazing job with Ironsworn, which I have been inspired by because I dabble in quest mechanics, not as intense as the Iron Vows of Ironsworn, but I think the way Sean does it is truly an inspiration.
I'm afraid I don't know the last reference, but I definitely hear all the previous ones. Oh wow! And from stories of fiction, I think you draw from fables and myths and legends of a traditional folklore instead of power gaming fantasy kick-ass fantasy stories, right?
Well, I did grow up like many other people reading Dritz Durden and Forgotten Realms, but yes, I would say that
obviously.
Evergreen is mostly divorced from that. There's definitely a hefty dose of fairy tale in Evergreen, although with a grounded take on them. The fairy tales are out there, but they're not. You don't necessarily want to be tangled up in one. Other than that, as far as literature goes, I have to say I have been inspired by many things. I think mostly. So it ranges, there's a lot of nature forward fiction, and I generally gobble that shit up. Anything from darker, folksy, or pagan things like Arthur Machen or Algernon Blackwood, who wrote The Wendigo and the Willows, some beautiful works of literature, all the way to more contemporary stuff like I adore Becky Chambers' Monk and Robot duology. It's a slice of life, low stakes thing where nature does play a crucial role, and I really invite anyone to read the two books. They are truly healing for the soul.
Interesting, very interesting. I'd like to ask some silly power gaming related questions to games that are not really meant to be power gamed, but let's say one of your players comes to your table and they really want to be as powerful as they want. Which path would you recommend them to follow?
That is a very fun question. And so in general, my attitude towards Evergreen is mostly horizontal, in the sense that if you become very experienced as a character, if you gain more abilities, some of them will make you strictly more powerful, will increase your numbers, so to say, but most of them will give you more tools to deal with situations. So you will not become extremely powerful, you won't get to a demigod status, you will be challenged by many things. And that's the second part of it, that there are all sorts of challenges in Evergreen. Combat is one thing. There are, like many fantasy games, there are specific rules, a specific minigame for conflicts, aka combat, and there are traits and abilities that revolve around that. But there are also a lot of other challenges that have nothing to do with combat. So you can make a very combat-forward character, which would be, I guess, closer to a min-max character in traditional fantasy games. But you might lag behind in other sorts of endeavors. And I like to say that mostly any kind of character, no matter how much they've invested into combat, for example, can be relevant in this minigame. Nobody will sit it out. So, in general, I would say if you want a min-max, pick your niche. Decide what you want to do very well. You won't do everything. If you want to be a very competent combatant, that is all well and good. Maybe you should start asking yourself the question about whether you should be killing the things you're killing, not just if you can. But that's an entire different question, because things bite back on a larger than life level.
Obviously, it's a silly question just for fun because, power gaming. But I think, but I think, well, with the system grounding you down to being max, whatever, is based on having more options and not overwhelming others with your, instead of taking the 2 top dice results up to 24, I take 36 or 48 and I become more powerful than you.
Yes.
As long as the system is grounded, there's no, it's just about options in the end, and I like that. And so I think now it's time for the bomb question, which everyone has been waiting for. So in this heavily competitive and primarily Dungeons and Dragons oriented and dominated industry, what do you think does an indie TTRPG has to do to stand out and make it on its own out there?
So that is an amazing question, and I think all of us would like an answer to that. But in general, I think the best thing we can do is get our games out there, but also lift up other creators. Much like the world of Evergreen, I think the community, or rather, the group of TTRPG creators are dependent on community. I have seen all sorts of people say great things about Evergreen, and I was compelled to also look at their things and say something nice in return, or not necessarily because they said something nice about me, but just you want to interact with people that interact with you. And I have seen that time and again. I have made connections and I know people just because I put my thing out there and they saw it, and then I saw their thing, or I saw their thing first and commented on it and they saw mine afterwards. So I really think we should be lifting each other up. And also, honestly, we should not be trying to compete with a conglomerate that is Wizards of the Coast. Like, you can't, as an indie developer, you cannot reach the heights of Dungeons and Dragons, because it just depends on money and brand recognition after a point. It doesn't have to do with quality of writing or of game design. What we can do is find our niche, find something we love to do, and also not necessarily overreach. I'm absolutely all for beautiful art and paying your artists and having art directors and editors, as you see with Evergreen as well. But each project has its limits, and I have seen people overreach. We also had a short discussion about picking your fights, and I think there's a lot of promoting your game that lives in this region of picking your fights. Just do the things you want to do and do them well. I have seen games do amazingly with very little. Look at Cairn, for example. Cairn is amazingly popular, built on public domain art, and living on a website that is just like a few scrolls from top to bottom.
That was a surprisingly amazing answer to that difficult question. So very well spoken. I like it. Yeah, I definitely like the idea that indies, their true weapon of indies is the communities, whereas Wizards doesn't give an F about its community, and sometimes it shows. Wizards in general. I mean, other products as well. But I don't want to throw all that much ash to the big giants out there. But the truth of the matter is, it's I find it interesting that when we were younger, I guess we might not be so close to the age, but it's okay. let's say like before the 2000s or early 2000s, there was like this stigma of like being a nerd, those who were playing TTRPGs and being on the side, pariahs or whatnot. And we've seen this recent couple of decades that this has changed, and we've heard like mottos such as "nerd is the new cool," and eventually started, TTRPGs in general coming into popularity, seeing celebrities playing them nowadays. It's getting better and better. But what I find strange, right? I really find it strange, is that Wizards and Dungeons and Dragons have somehow managed to convince the general population that playing TTRPGs is cool, but not playing any other indie TTRPGs, like playing our TTRPG is cool, because of our RPG is presented on, you can see it on Stranger Things. It was extremely popular when the kids were playing Dungeons and Dragons. We have the big budget movie playing on the cinemas called Dungeons and Dragons. We have like our shows on like Secret Level and whatnot. A few more examples. When you go to Twitch, you have an option. What you want to watch? Dungeons and Dragons or all the other TTRPGs into one tag? It's not like even Vampire the Masquerade has its own tag. I think like it's Dungeons and Dragons or all other TTRPGs. And one more thing that I find interesting and I discovered recently. On Tinder, on the dating app, you have like interests that you can place. You have Dungeons and Dragons, but you don't have TTRPGs. You have like board games, Dungeons and Dragons, but no TTRPGs. So I would like to hear your thoughts on this matter because we are both indie and we talk along with other indies, and Wizards basically like has this monopoly, I think, of this industry.
Well, that is undeniably true. I mean, maybe not just Wizards, but a few large games. I think in the East, Call of Cthulhu is hugely popular, maybe even more than D&D. But yeah, there are a few big sharks, a few conglomerates that kind of swallow the hobby. And Wizards, I think, is the most egregious because, as you mentioned, they act like a company. They're not just a huge company, they act like it. And that's the problem. And I think I have nothing but to say about any particular person in this pipeline. The thing is that after you reach some level of company size, you really revert to acting as a statistical unit and not as people. Marketing needs to make this better known. How do they do that? By making it its own brand. Each person there will not care, or each person's opinion there will not really be important about how indie games are useful or important or not. They will just act as pieces of that machine because that's how huge corporations act. That's a fact. But in general, yes, I do think that they have made some egregious moves, both to their consumers and to their creators. Look at the whole OGL fiasco.
Yeah,
what was it, like a year ago?
We
Maybe
kinda
less.
very quickly forgot about that as a community and forgiven them or forgotten about it. And I still think, but like, and it was followed by a couple more like fiascos. It wasn't just this one. It was like in
And layoffs
recent
and so
years,
on. Yes, absolutely.
yeah, the layoffs. In those few years we have seen like that they don't really care about the hobby evolving in general and growing. They just want their product to have more sales. And there is hope. There is hope. Like, for example, this Chris Perkins and another, I can't really remember the name right now, big name in Dungeons and Dragons were most recently been laid off, and eventually and instantly the Critical Role team and Daridon Press hired them. So it's like, okay, I think like talented people will find interesting jobs in the community and in the industry rather, and it is growing and it is evolving. Maybe as of late I'm a little bit more spiteful towards Wizards. I don't know.
Hey, I will never judge any indie developer that is spiteful of the company that put the world's greatest role-playing game on their book covers. Like, come on,
Yeah, yeah. It's
have
like
some tact about it.
no, it's like okay, then our slogans will be this is much better than D&D because of this and that. You know, it's like if we can go this route, it's on. You know, but
No, but the thing is, I really think we should not be defining our games in relation to D&D. Let it be what it is. It will, of course, have its audience because there's huge money involved and because of the brand recognition and the history. Like, I don't fault the game itself. I mostly fault the company as an entity. But I do think there's such a rich space of games out there. And, like, really, if anyone watches this, go support, like Evil Hat, go support Rowan, Rook and Deckard, or Possum Creek Games. There are so many developers that made their own thing that could really not be compared to D&D because it's really
yeah,
entirely
Like,
unique and original.
like J Dragon that you mentioned with their games before even Wanderhome, like Sleepover and some other games. They were like small indie developers behind it, and it wasn't like a huge company. And through crowdfunding, they did pretty well, and they continue to do so. So there's definitely a route. So to start wrapping up this episode, what's your what's your journey? What's your next steps? Are you going to crowdfund Evergreen? Are you going to go a specific other route? What is the next big steps for Evergreen?
So the next big step, which is currently underway, is so just for context, right now we are in a public playtest phase, and we have been in it for about half a year now. So on our website, people can just grab the playtest document for free, including pre-made characters, and play through our pre-made adventure and give us their opinions. And I have had amazing feedback by all sorts of people playing the game. So right now, what I want to move forward with is a second and final round of playtest, which will be more similar to how the book will look at the end. It will be a snippet of the final book, informed by all the great feedback we saw. People that played the first playtest will notice differences with the second one, and also introducing more mechanics. Right now, what's publicly available is the basis of Evergreen, which gives some flavor, but the system itself is fairly straightforward. Now that we have found, we have made some corrections and set this in stone, we are free to iterate on the unique mechanics that make Evergreen, which mostly have to do with character progression and personal quests and characters' drives and faults, and also detailed base building, because as I mentioned, Evergreen is about community, and a lot of its questions are about this particular community that people will set up in the edge of the known world, and where the community's needs end and where the individual needs start from each of the characters. So there's new rules and refined rules and more content coming out hopefully this autumn, if everything goes well. And after that, and after we have some more time to playtest and get feedback from people, I would like to go for a crowdfund, which is a beast of its own, but we'll get to that when we get to it. I'm not too worried about it for now.
I have a couple of blogs with lessons learned from crowdfunding. I would definitely recommend them. They have so you can. It's not like the ultimate guide to success. It's what not to do more so than anything else. So definitely, if you go that route, Kickstarter or crowdfund or whatever, definitely there is wisdom there to be shared for myself and others. I do think it's a best way for an indie developer to self-publish instead of selling their idea or sorely relying on sales via their store or something. Crowdfunding is a very interesting platform in general. So what you basically need to do is, as soon as you feel ready, set it up and start basically gathering emails, something that you're already in the process of, I presume. And once you reach the numbers that you think you're comfortable with, you find, confident, then it's time to launch, promo, and invest maybe some more money in advertisement, and I think it's gonna go great. The important thing is to find your people, to find those who enjoy your content. You have like one comment, but it was like a bot or something. Damn it.
Oh, well. For sure, first off, I have to say that your blog post is amazingly written. And
have you read it? Cool.
Yes, absolutely. And I can only commend that kind of thing because it's really giving back to the community. As I said, we're stronger together.
Right. This was the most important message, I think. Yes, indeed.
And that's also part of my reason for wanting to crowdfund, because I could start selling Evergreen when it's ready as a PDF, and I could fund a print run either personally or through these sales of the PDF. But if we get to crowdfunding and if we do reasonably well, I can hopefully fund more people writing for our game. And as I said, I have lots of love and lots of respect for many people in the community, and I would really be honored to have their writing, even as small snippets, or their art in the book. But of course, my line is that they will have to be paid fairly, which usually means more than most people are paid in this line of work. So I would need the additional budget, and most of my crowdfunding money, if we get to that, would be funneled back into the community to just get more amazing people to do more amazing things in this context for Evergreen.
Right. Very well spoken, Sotiris. It has been an absolute pleasure meeting you and sharing this talk. I cannot say that I most definitely be in your playlist list, but I do have it on my mind. It's all a matter of having, the time to do everything.
Of course, absolutely, I get it.
But yeah, it's definitely on the table for playing Evergreen, and doing any sorts of other future collaborations in when the time is right. So, final message to the Evergreen fans out there.
Just stick together, find strength in each other. Community is important, not just in Evergreen.
I love it. This was the best message. So, thank you so much, Sotiris, creator of Evergreen, for joining us. I have been your host and narrator, John. And everyone, stay legit and stay meta.